Welcome back, listeners of Vintage Car Chronicles. Today's deep dive takes us into the world of a car so radical, it looked like it belonged in a cartoon, not on a racetrack.
You're talking about the DeltaWing, right?
The one and only. Beneath that almost comical, unconventional exterior lies a story of ambition, ingenuity, and a genuine attempt to, revolutionize motorsports.
What's captivating about the DeltaWing is how it challenged everything we thought we knew about race car design.
We've got a mountain of research here, and I have to admit I'm already fascinated. This Ben Bowlby, the designer, he envisioned a car hitting the same speeds as its competitors, but using half the weight, half the fuel, half the drag, and half the power.
Half of everything, double the speed. That was Bowlby's mantra.
Is that even possible?
Well, that was the question everyone was asking back in 2010 when Bowlby unveiled his radical prototype at the Chicago Auto Show.
I can only imagine the looks on people's faces when they first saw this thing.
Picture this. A car with a ridiculously narrow front track and that signature delta-shaped design, ditching traditional wings entirely and relying solely on underbody downforce for grip.
So no giant wings, just pure physics at work.
Precisely. Bowlby's goal was to rewrite the rules of aerodynamics. He believed that by minimizing drag and maximizing ground effect, he could achieve incredible speeds with a fraction of the horsepower.
But IndyCar wasn't convinced.
No, they weren't. They ultimately went with a more conventional Dallara design for their series, but that wasn't the end of the DeltaWing story.
That's where Don Panoz enters the picture, right?
Exactly. Don Panoz, the founder of the American Le Mans series, a man known for his bold moves and his unwavering belief in innovation. He saw the potential in Bowlby's audacious project and decided to become its champion.
Panoz had a knack for taking risks, didn't he?
He absolutely did, and with his backing, the DeltaWing found a new home, not in the IndyCar series, but at the prestigious 24 Hours of Le Mans in 2012.
Le Mans. That's a huge leap. How did they even get it into the race?
Panoz managed to secure the DeltaWing a spot as a Garage 56 entry.
Garage 56. I'm not familiar with that term.
Think of it as the wild card slot at Le Mans. It's reserved for experimental vehicles that don't fit into any existing category. A perfect fit for the DeltaWing, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. It was in a league of its own.
Yeah.
So they take this radical car to Le Mans, the biggest stage in endurance racing, and what happens?
Well, let's just say it turned a lot of heads. People couldn't believe what they were seeing.
I bet. Did it perform well?
Surprisingly, yes. It was shockingly quick. It even managed to keep pace with some of the LMP2 cars, which were much more powerful.
That's incredible. It was running on a tiny Nissan four-cylinder engine, right?
That's right, a little 1.6-liter turbocharged engine, putting out a mere 300 horsepower.
And it was holding its own against cars with twice the power.
That's the beauty of Bowlby's design. The DeltaWing was incredibly lightweight and aerodynamically slippery, allowing it to achieve impressive speeds without needing a massive engine.
So it was living up to its promise of efficiency.
Oh, absolutely. It was sipping fuel like a hummingbird, completing an astonishing 11 laps at Le Mans on a single tank, unheard of for a prototype at the time.
So it sounds like the DeltaWing was a success at Le Mans.
Well, not quite.
What happened?
It was running incredibly well, showing the world its potential, but then disaster struck.
A crash.
Yes, a collision with a Toyota prototype ended the DeltaWing's Le Mans debut prematurely. A heartbreaking end to what had been a promising run.
Ah, the cruel realities of racing. But the DeltaWing wasn't done yet, was it?
No, its story was far from over. It had another chance to prove itself just a few months later at the Petit Le Mans race at Road Atlanta.
Another endurance race. Did they enter in the same experimental category?
Yes, it was still an unclassified entry, but this time Don Panoz decided to add a few handicaps.
Handicaps. Why would he do that?
He wanted to prove the DeltaWing's capabilities beyond a shadow of a doubt. He wanted to show the world that it could compete even with the odds stacked against it.
So what kind of handicaps are we talking about?
Well, for starters, the DeltaWing was forced to start the race from the pit lane, putting it at an immediate disadvantage. And get this. It also didn't get the usual benefits during full-course cautions, like being waved past slower traffic.
Wow. Panoz was really throwing down the gauntlet, wasn't he? He must have had a lot of confidence in the car.
He did, and that confidence was rewarded. Despite those self-imposed handicaps, the DeltaWing finished the race in a very respectable 5th place overall.
5th place. Starting from the pits and without the full-course caution benefits.
That's right. It was a testament to the car's speed, its efficiency, and its reliability. It ran flawlessly throughout the entire race.
That's incredible. It really showed what the DeltaWing was capable of. It seemed like it was finally ready to become a serious contender in the world of motorsports.
It did. After that impressive performance at Petit Le Mans, everyone was talking about the DeltaWing. It seemed like it was poised to become a regular fixture in the American Le Mans series.
So what happened? Did it live up to that promise?
Well, that's where things get a little more complicated. You see, Don Panoz decided to bring the project in-house and develop a new engine for the DeltaWing, based on a Mazda design.
A new engine. But what about that Nissan engine that had been powering it?
That decision marked the beginning of a new chapter for the DeltaWing, and unfortunately, it also marked the beginning of a bitter controversy.
Controversy. What happened?
Well, you see, Ben Bowlby, the mastermind behind the DeltaWing's design, had moved on from the project and started working for, you guessed it, Nissan.
Oh, no. That can't be good.
And it wasn't. Not long after Bowlby joined Nissan, they unveiled their own experimental race car, the ZEOD RC. And let's just say it bore a striking resemblance to a certain Delta-shaped car.
You're kidding. Did Nissan basically just rip off the DeltaWing's design?
That's what it looked like to many people. Don Panoz was furious. He felt betrayed, and he accused Nissan of stealing his intellectual property.
I can't blame him. That's a serious accusation.
It was. And it led to a long and messy legal battle between Panoz and Nissan, a battle that would cast a shadow over the DeltaWing's legacy and raise questions about the ethics of innovation in motorsports.
Sounds like a story for another time. But in the meantime, the DeltaWing was still racing, right?
It was. The Panoz team continued to campaign the DeltaWing in both the American Le Mans Series and the later United Sports Car Championship, with varying degrees of success.
So while the lawyers were battering it out in the courtroom, the DeltaWing was out there on the track, still pushing boundaries and defying expectations.
That's the spirit of the DeltaWing. It never gave up, even when the odds were stacked against it. It's a fascinating story, isn't it? A story of innovation and determination, but also of missed opportunities and, sadly, a bit of controversy.
Yeah, I'm still trying to wrap my head around the whole Nissan thing. But before we get into that, I think it's worth diving a little deeper into the DeltaWing's design. How did this thing actually work?
Right, because it wasn't just about looking different. The DeltaWing's unconventional shape was a direct result of Bowlby's radical approach to aerodynamics.
It was like nothing anyone had ever seen before.
Exactly. It challenged all the traditional notions of race car design. Think back to that incredibly narrow front track. The front tires were so close together, almost touching.
Yeah, it looked like it could barely stand upright.
And that was intentional. Those tiny front tires had very little to do with generating downforce.
So where was the downforce coming from?
The majority of it was generated by the car's underbody, creating a low-pressure area that sucked the car to the track.
Kind of like those ground effect cars from the 70s and 80s, but taken to an extreme.
Exactly. It was like ground effect on steroids. Imagine air flowing under the car, speeding up as it squeezed through this narrow space between the car's floor and the ground. That creates a low-pressure zone, sucking the car down onto the track.
Okay, so the faster the air moves underneath, the lower the pressure and the stronger the downward force. Clever. And because those front tires weren't burdened with creating downforce, they could be super narrow, right?
Precisely. Those tiny front tires, almost like they belonged on a bicycle, played a key role in reducing drag and weight, which meant the car didn't need a massive engine to achieve impressive speeds.
So less weight, less drag, less power needed.
Yeah.
That's a huge takeaway here. The DeltaWing turned traditional race car design on its head. But wouldn't those small tires make it super twitchy and unstable?
That was one of the big misconceptions about the DeltaWing. People assumed it would be difficult to handle, but it was actually surprisingly stable and predictable to drive.
Really?
Yeah, and that was thanks to that balanced weight distribution and those meticulously designed aerodynamics.
I read somewhere that they even did wind tunnel testing with a scale model of the car way back in the early stages of development.
They did, and those tests proved that the DeltaWing's design could actually work. It wasn't just some crazy idea on paper.
We actually spoke with Marino Franchitti, one of the DeltaWing's development drivers, and he had nothing but praise for the car's handling. He said it felt intuitive and responsive, and that he was able to connect with it really quickly.
That's great to hear, and it speaks volumes about the effectiveness of Bowlby's design. It may have looked strange, but it was a legitimate racing car, capable of going toe-to-toe with those more traditional prototypes. But as we discussed, reliability was a recurring problem.
Right. Those gremlins kept popping up.
So why do you think that was? Because when you're pushing the boundaries of technology like they were with the DeltaWing, you're bound to encounter a few hiccups along the way.
Especially with such a radical design. It wasn't just the engine that was unique. They were also experimenting with new materials and construction techniques.
Yeah, and remember those experimental gearboxes Franchitti mentioned? They were pushing the limits of what was possible at the time, and unfortunately, they suffered a number of failures.
It's a shame, because when the DeltaWing was running well, it was mesmerizing to watch, gliding through corners, defying expectations with its unique shape.
And don't forget that incredible fuel efficiency.
Oh yeah, 11 laps on a single tank of fuel at Le Mans. That was unheard of for a prototype at the time.
And it really highlighted the potential of Bowlby's vision. If they could have solved those reliability issues, who knows what the DeltaWing could have accomplished.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? It's one of those big what-ifs in motorsports history. But hey, let's not dwell on the negatives. What about the DeltaWing's lasting impact?
Yeah, good point. I think it inspired a whole generation of engineers and designers to think differently about how race cars could be built.
It proved that speed and efficiency could be achieved in new ways and challenged the traditional way of thinking.
Right. It was a testament to the power of innovation, and a reminder that sometimes the most unconventional ideas can lead to the most impressive results.
Speaking of debate, what about that controversy with Nissan and the ZEODRC? Do you think Nissan intentionally copied the DeltaWing's design?
It's hard to say for sure. There were definitely similarities between the two cars, and the fact that Nissan unveiled the ZEODRC so soon after Bowlby joined them did raise a lot of eyebrows.
And let's not forget the lawsuit Panoz filed. He claimed that Nissan had hired Bowlby specifically to get their hands on the DeltaWing's intellectual property. And it seems like the court agreed with him, at least to some extent, because they did reach a settlement.
That's true, but Nissan has always insisted that the ZEODRC was its own independent project, that any resemblance to the DeltaWing was purely coincidental.
A bit too convenient, don't you think?
Yeah, perhaps. It's a murky situation, and the details of that out-of-court settlement are still confidential to this day. But that whole affair definitely cast a shadow over the DeltaWing's legacy.
It's unfortunate, because the DeltaWing deserves to be remembered for what it was, a bold and innovative machine that pushed the boundaries of racing.
I agree. But you could also argue that the controversy brought the DeltaWing's design to an even wider audience. It started conversations about intellectual property rights and the ethics of innovation in motorsports.
That's a good point. And it really highlighted the challenges of protecting intellectual property in a global industry where ideas can spread so quickly.
Right. In the end, the DeltaWing story teaches us that innovation often comes at a price. Success is never guaranteed.
But it's also a story about ambition, audacious design, and chasing a dream, even when things get tough.
Absolutely. And let's not forget the human element. All those talented engineers, designers, and drivers who dedicated themselves to this project.
Right, they poured their hearts and souls into making the DeltaWing a reality.
Their passion and dedication are inspiring, and they deserve all the credit for creating a car that defied expectations and pushed the limits of what was possible. So where does all of this leave us in terms of the DeltaWing's overall impact on motorsports?
I think it's fair to say its direct impact on racing technology is debatable. We haven't really seen any other manufacturers adopt a similar design philosophy, have we?
That's true, but I think its indirect impact might be much greater. It served as a powerful reminder that innovation, even if it doesn't lead to immediate success, is something we should always strive for.
The DeltaWing's legacy lies in its audacity. It broke the mold and challenged the status quo. It's a story that will continue to fascinate anyone who loves pushing the boundaries of what's possible in motorsports.
It's a story that reminds us that even in a world bound by tradition and established norms, there's always room for bold ideas and unconventional thinking. And who knows, maybe one day we'll see a resurgence of the DeltaWing's design principles, maybe even in a form we can't even imagine yet.
Now that would be incredible. Even though the DeltaWing is gone, its spirit of innovation lives on.
Now, let's shift gears a bit and talk about something that often gets overlooked. The DeltaWing's short but fascinating journey into the world of road cars. Remember, Don Panoz had grand plans to bring the DeltaWing's fuel-saving design to the masses with the DeltaWing GT.
Ah yes, the DeltaWing GT. A street-legal version of this radical race car. I remember seeing pictures of it. It looked like something straight out of a science fiction film.
It was a head-turner for sure, with that sleek, aerodynamic shape and those signature narrow front wheels. Panoz's vision was to create a high-performance, fuel-efficient sports car that could revolutionize the way we think about personal transportation.
I can only imagine what it would be like to cruise down the highway in that thing. You'd be the envy of every driver on the road.
No doubt about it. But unfortunately, the DeltaWing GT never got past the concept stage.
Why not? What stopped it from becoming a reality?
Well, several factors played a role. For one, developing a road car for everyday use is a lot more complex and expensive than building a race car, especially for a small, independent company like Panoz was.
There are strict safety and emissions regulations to meet. And the design has to be practical for everyday driving, which isn't exactly easy with the DeltaWing's, shall we say, unique shape.
Exactly. The DeltaWing's unconventional design presented a lot of challenges. For example, that narrow front track would have made it difficult to incorporate standard headlights and turn signals. And that low-slung aerodynamic body wouldn't exactly be easy to get in and out of.
Plus, it was designed as a two-seater, not exactly a family car.
Right. And then there was the matter of its looks. The DeltaWing's design was, shall we say, polarizing. Some people were captivated by its unique aesthetic, but others, well, not so much.
It's a car you either love or hate, no in between. And that's a big risk for a road car, especially one with a premium price tag.
Exactly. So the DeltaWing GT remained a dream, a tantalizing glimpse into what might have been.
It's a shame it never made it to production. But it speaks to Don Panoz's visionary thinking and his unwavering belief in the DeltaWing's potential.
Absolutely. He saw beyond the racetrack, and he envisioned a future where the DeltaWing's design could make our cars more efficient and sustainable.
It's too bad we never got to see the DeltaWing GT out on the open road. But even as a concept, it pushed the boundaries of car design and challenged us to think differently about the future of transportation.
And I think that's an important takeaway here. As we wrap up our deep dive into the DeltaWing, I want to leave you with this thought. The DeltaWing may not have achieved all of its goals, but it made a lasting impact on the world of motorsports. It taught us that boldness and innovation are crucial, even if they don't always lead to immediate success.
It inspired us to challenge the status quo and embrace the power of unconventional thinking. And who knows, maybe one day we'll see those DeltaWing design principles make a comeback. You know, we spent a lot of time talking about the technology, the controversy, even the road car dreams. But there's another side to the DeltaWing story that we shouldn't forget. The human side.
You're absolutely right. Behind every innovative machine, there's a team of passionate individuals who poured their hearts and souls into making it a reality.
The DeltaWing was no exception. It had a dream team of engineers, designers, and drivers, all united by their belief in this radical car.
A group of true believers who weren't afraid to challenge conventions and push the boundaries of what was possible.
So let's start with the mastermind behind it all, Ben Bowlby. We've touched on his vision and determination, but what was he like as a person? I mean, to come up with something as radical as the DeltaWing, he must have been a pretty unique character.
Oh, Bowlby is a true visionary, no doubt about that. A real out-of-the-box thinker, you know? The kind of guy who sees possibilities where others see obstacles. He's got that rare combination of technical brilliance and an almost childlike enthusiasm for his ideas.
Yeah, I get that sense from everything I've read about him. He wasn't just designing a race car, he was trying to change the world, one corner at a time.
And he had a remarkable ability to explain his vision in a way that inspired others. Remember those clear and concise explanations of the DeltaWing's design. He could break down complex concepts into something anyone could understand.
He made you believe in the DeltaWing, even if you didn't fully grasp the physics behind it.
Exactly. He had that gift. And then you have Dan Gurney, a legend in American motorsports, bringing decades of experience and a winning pedigree to the project.
Dan Gurney, the all-American racing hero, driver, constructor, innovator, he seemed to have done it all.
He was the perfect partner for Bowlby, a calming influence, you know, bringing that practical know-how and real-world racing experience that's so crucial when you're developing something as radical as the DeltaWing.
And let's not forget his son, Justin Gurney, who played a key role at All-American Racers in turning those initial sketches and ideas into a real working race car.
The Gurney saw something special in Bowlby's vision, something worth taking a chance on. And then, of course, there's Don Panoz, the man who ultimately embraced the DeltaWing and gave it a home.
Panoz, the maverick entrepreneur who wasn't afraid to shake things up in the world of motorsports.
He saw the DeltaWing as a symbol of innovation, a challenge to the established order. He believed in it, even when others doubted it.
He was willing to put his money where his mouth was, investing heavily in the DeltaWing's development and giving it a platform to compete on a global stage, which is pretty remarkable when you think about it.
It is, especially when you consider the controversy with Nissan. Panoz stood by the DeltaWing even when things got tough.
He fought hard to keep the project alive. even when it seemed like all hope was lost.
And then there were the drivers, the brave souls who climbed into the cockpit of this unconventional machine and pushed it to its limits.
Drivers like Marino Franchitti, Catherine Legg, Andy Merrick, talented individuals who were willing to take a chance on something different, something unknown.
They faced unique challenges, adapting their driving styles to the DeltaWing's unusual handling and dealing with those persistent reliability issues.
But they also got to experience the thrill of driving a car that was unlike anything else on the track.
A car that turned heads and sparked debates. They were pioneers in their own right.
It's easy to get lost in the technical details and the controversies, but the DeltaWing story is ultimately a human story, a story of passion, dedication, and the pursuit of a dream.
It's a testament to the power of collaboration. What can be achieved when a diverse group of talented people come together with a shared vision.
And even though the DeltaWing's journey has come to an end, its legacy lives on, inspiring us to think differently, challenge conventions, and never stop innovating.
Well said. The DeltaWing may be gone, but its spirit lives on.
And for our listeners who are eager to explore more captivating stories from the world of motorsports, be sure to tune in to Vintage Car Chronicles, our daily podcast dedicated to uncovering the history and the personalities that have shaped the automotive world as we know it. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the DeltaWing, a car that dared to be different and left an indelible mark on the world of racing.